At 3:38, he spots one. In the city's northwest, a child has run into the path of a 4x4 vehicle. His life now hangs in the balance.
As an American paramedic, I'm going to be reacting to a video of HEMS London. So the London Helicopter EMS, which holds a doctor and a specially trained paramedic. Stay tuned at the end of this video to see what happens to this patient. Now, make sure to smash and annihilate that like button down below. Tap subscribe for more EMS content like this. Without any further ado, here we go.
With suspected head injuries, he needs specialist treatment on scene quickly.
Whenever you get a call to a child, it doesn't matter how experienced you are, how long you've been doing the job, it really starts your heart racing.
We'll make a decision when we're there. We're home.
This flight crew of a doctor and a paramedic are responding to a 12-year-old that has been struck by a 4x4 motor vehicle. So if you don't know what that is, a Jeep. Now, the patient was struck head on. So we start thinking about, on the way to the call, what kind of injuries might we see, right? Chest, abdomen, depending on how large the child is, could even be the head, right? Now we're saying a 12-year-old here, so we're thinking probably more here of getting struck in the chest, abdomen, pelvis. What's going to be the responsiveness of the child? And we start looking for life threats. That's the first thing we're going to do.
It's a particularly built-up area. The best they can find is a sports field, but it's half a mile from the scene. The team have to find their way on foot. Time is not on their side.
The first thing you're probably wondering is, why not just the ground ambulance? Why is there a flight team responding to this call? The reason is the patient is in an area that is not near an actual trauma center. So they've called a flight crew to actually stabilize the patient and then get them to a major trauma center, right? Not every hospital is alike. Not every hospital can handle a major pediatric trauma, multi-system trauma, which is multiple areas of the body that are affected.
Who we got here?
12-year-old gentleman who's been struck by a car, that one there.
Okay. You could see from the outset he was a very, very sick child. He was in a deep coma. He'd had a significant blow to the head, and you could see that his face and head was bloodied through bruising and wounds. But the thing that concerned me most was that his breathing was very, very poor and grunting.
So like we thought, this patient has a head injury. This patient is, they say, in a deep coma, so unresponsive. And then we're also looking at the lungs, right? So the biggest thing, the first assessment that we do here, we're looking at patient's eyes, patient's airway, patient's breathing status, patient's circulation status, what are their vital signs. And the whole goal of the flight team right now is to make sure and stabilize this child, to make sure they get from the scene to the trauma center to have the best chance at life. That's the goal of the flight team right now.
Breathing's not right, is it?
He's struggling quite heavily with it, but I can't do much.
His lungs are bruised and blood blocks his airway.
The biggest life threat this child has right now is blood in the airway. So from the Jeep collision, struck in the chest, we have injuries to the lungs. So the lungs are bruised and the lungs are bleeding. And that bleeding is going up the airway. So what this team has to do is secure that airway and actually go in and suction out all that blood so we have a clear airway and we can ventilate and give oxygen to this child so they can make it to the trauma center, right?
5 mils of etomidate. And these drugs are not simple antibiotics. These are drugs that can, given in the wrong dose, can literally stop your heart.
The crew have been on the scene for 16 minutes.
It's all right, just tube, please.
By the time Mohammed is intubated, daylight has almost gone.
One of the most important things on a major trauma call is time. Now they mentioned about drugs, right? So in this case, what they had to do is something called an RSI, okay? A rapid sequence inhibition, something called induction, right? RSI, what it is we are giving the patient a paralytic and a sedative. So we're paralyzing the patient and we're sedating the patient in order to pass a breathing tube through. So that way, in this case, we can actually suction out all the blood, clear their airway, and then give them good ventilation, which is the movement of air in and out.
Control his breathing, and after the tube was put down, we literally had to put suction catheters down that tube, deep down into his lungs, and suck out the blood. And all of that blood was coming from the bruised, damaged lungs that had occurred when the car hit his chest.
One piece of the scene size up. Did you see how busy that road was? So without being there, we can assume that it was a high rate of speed that caused this. This is a high mechanism of injury event. So we could assume the car had to be going at least 30, 40, 50, maybe even 60 miles per hour possibly. This is a major road.
The helicopter will fly him to the Royal London Hospital, Britain's busiest trauma centre.
So what exactly is a trauma center? What makes a trauma center a trauma center? Well, two things: the equipment, the capabilities, and the personnel that are there, right? So to be a trauma center, there has to be certain people on standby and certain equipment on standby, and that designates it a trauma center.
He's hit by a car. He has a head injury. He's got multiple facial abrasions and abrasions to his lower limb.
This is a great scene here because you can see here how invested that we can get sometimes as EMS in our patients, but we're only with them for a short amount of time, right? They were on scene for 16 minutes, then they flew them, they gave a report, and now they're going back to their crew room, and the patient they did all that work, but the patient is now in someone else's hands. So you can see how they're kind of hanging around, they're looking at the imaging that's coming in. This is very common. I've been in the same situation. I've given a report in major trauma rooms. You're hanging around after, you want to see what's going on, but you also have other calls to get to. So you have to get back in service. Totally understand how they feel and what a service that HEMS London is providing with that flight crew. The first link in the description is my life's work, 420 plus videos of content, plus access to my private community group to help you get through school and NREMT at every level, EMT, advanced EMT, and even the paramedic level. My friends, I will see you in the next video. Take care.